So everybody's morning's going good.
Marvelous, thank you.
Should we wait to start recording until she hops on?
Already recording.
Well, nice and calm. I like it. There she is. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, guys.
Morning. Good morning. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing wonderful, as we all are.
Turning up volume and all those good things. Okay.
All right.
Terry, what's the weather like?
It's chilly here this morning, hence the scarf around my neck, because I get cooler quicker than Michael does. So versus putting the house on 80, I just leave it where it is and put a scarf on.
Love
Have you
it.
guys gotten any snow in Colorado yet, Ryan?
Yes, we the past 2 Thursdays we've gotten snow, but really it was this past Thursday we've gotten a real snow, a couple inches.
Okay.
It was the day I flew back in.
We had maybe like
You've gotten snow
6
too,
hours
Jenna?
of snow.
Where are you?
I'm in Colorado now. I was in California to visit my mom, but I'm back in Colorado now.
Oh, is Colorado your home state?
Yes,
Okay, I don't know why I thought it was somewhere on the East Coast.
Yeah, so 3
I've
of us
been
got
all
some
over the
snow.
place.
So you're like a nomad.
Yes.
I've been to Colorado once, and I went to Estes Park. Is that it?
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Fine, yeah.
that's 30 minutes from my house. I live just at the base of the mountain.
We need a visit. We need a visit.
Same for my in-laws, basically. Like
Yeah,
Jenna and my in-laws are right around the corner from each other. So they're right
Yeah, we are.
at the foot of Estes.
I haven't
Beautiful.
been to Estes Park.
We just
But the
need
crazy
a
thing
little
is, though,
reunion.
This is where it's
We have a
going
little
down
farm.
in Mariposa. Y'all, look, y'all bring Terry. Let's just do it, right? Bring your
Yeah.
spouses and
We need a
significance and
We need a
party.
personal Waymakers conference, and since Colorado
Yeah.
seems to be the main point, then let's do this thing.
get a
Yeah.
cabin in the mountains. Let's do it.
I know. I have a little farm, and we can just go up to Estes. So
Have
I
yet
have
to
a
been,
friend
have yet
who
to go
has
there yet.
800 acres and 3 cabins, so we can just borrow her property.
That works for me. That works for me.
800?
Wait a minute. Who has the 800 acres? Just curious.
My friend Jackie, I'm going over there tomorrow for lunch. She has 3 cabins
800.
and 800 acres right at Ward, right as you go up to Estes and Ward.
Well, tell Jackie that we will be visiting her sometime next year.
Okay.
Guys, work at the
I'll book
date.
it.
You know, don't book it while we're in the Galapagos, because that won't work.
Yeah, true.
In April, right?
And then the cruise
right.
too. We can't overlap with the cruise either.
Yeah.
So
Right.
It'll all happen. It'll all happen. It has its time and place.
it does. It does. It does.
All
It's
right.
all part of the journey.
Am
Speaking
I
of,
just worked with the 3 of you this morning?
no, there's Mariposa, Milan, Monty, and Ryan. You should see all
Yeah, we
of
should
them.
have all 5.
You may have to, if you're on your phone, just scroll and then you'll be able to see everyone.
And Mariposa is joining us in and out because she's had a storm in Colombia, and it's been
Well, I've
her
got
internet spotting.
now I don't have Monty and Mariposa.
It's okay. I'm still here. I'll shout out every now and again.
Okay, there's Mariposa. Okay.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
for today's
And Ryan-
episode,
Yeah.
yes. Well, today's episode, we're gonna be talking about the hero's journey. So everyone's on the hero's journey. Most of us don't understand it yet, so we're gonna hopefully bring some clarity and show you or explain our life experiences with it. Jenna, if you would like to take it off, we have a
Yeah.
good episode today for you.
So this is something I've been working on, researching and teaching for over 20 years. I used to teach screenwriting, directing, and when I taught that, I taught The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler, which is, taking Joseph Campbell's theory of the hero's journey and applying it to screenwriting. And I helped, a couple of filmmakers write screenplays and really work out their own journey on scripts. But before that, I studied literature and mythology. And so I spent a lot of time reading Joseph Campbell and understanding the hero's journey. And it's interesting for me how it's morphed over those 20 years, because I looked at it as literature, as, kind of a founding idea in storytelling, in the storytelling of human stories. And then as I moved through my undergraduate and my graduate studies, I studied with an incredible professor, mentor, which we'll talk about in a minute, one of the archetypes in the hero's journey, and poet named Dennis Brutus. Dennis Brutus, when I studied with him, was a visiting professor at Naropa University and at University of Colorado, where he was exiled after leaving South Africa during apartheid. He was imprisoned with Mandela on Robben Island and one of Mandela's dearest friends. And so studying from him, I learned a remarkable lesson story about the griot and the power of poets, the power of storytellers, the power of writers, Terry. So it was a remarkable lesson, because we talked about how from the beginning of time, the griot, or the storyteller, was the center of the community. And the reason for that is because they held, the stories, the genealogy, all of the songs and stories. Oral storytelling was a tradition. And the hero's journey really is a written version of an oral storytelling tool, right? We used to be people of orality, and meaning that we had to have things that had structure and formula and universal archetypes and symbols so that everyone could understand them. And so the hero's journey, it's a long and involved process. And I think everyone's really familiar with the hero's journey, but maybe doesn't understand, exactly what it's about or what it means. But it starts, and this is something Mariposa and I were talking about earlier, but it is a hero's journey, but there is a way to interpret it as a heroine's journey, right? So we'll talk about that momentarily, but just to understand the basic universal story, Aristotle talked about the narrative. He introduced the narrative into our culture, and the narrative is a linear story. And so it's very interesting because it reflects our own human lives. Our own human lives are linear, right? We're born, we live, and we die. And even if you have spiritual beliefs that take you beyond that linear path, our physical beings, our physical bodies have a linear path. Once we make a decision, we have to move forward with that decision. And with the hero's journey, it's really a coming of age story. It starts in the ordinary world, and there's little pictures, if you guys want to look at them, in the chat. One, I'm afraid, is too small. So the second one is a little bit better, but essentially, a hero starts in the known world, or the ordinary world. And that's a world that is familiar, that they were born into, where everything is the same. And within that world, often when they're a child, they have a call to adventure, right? So if you think about yourself, when you were little, what did you want to be? And we talked about this at one point in the Waymakers, what we were when we were little. I always wanted to be a teacher. I always would teach all of my siblings, I would stand up and lecture them. And it was my call to adventure, right? And so then I went away from that, and ultimately I came back to it. But how did I get there? And why did that journey, reconvene for me? Or why did that calling come back around? We refuse the call when we don't know enough, right? When we haven't really embraced our true selves, when we don't have the understanding to know that that call to adventure is, a way for us to fulfill who we truly are, our purpose. So often we need to, like in the hero's journey, meet with a mentor. In the hero's journey, you see a lot of like Carl Jung's archetypes, right? The people that we meet in our lives that hold mirrors up to us to reflect back ourselves, but also to teach us what we need to learn in our journey. And the first person in that journey is a mentor. And the mentor can or cannot, help us. I often taught this with film. And I don't know if everyone's seen the film Gladiator, but Maximus is a soldier. It's who he is, right? In the beginning of the film, he's a commander, he's a soldier, and then he, wins the war. He goes into the tent, and the emperor comes in and says, Maximus, you're more than a soldier. You're a leader. I need you, to become emperor because my son is corrupt and I only trust you. And Maximus is like, well, man, no way. I can't do that. I'm a soldier. And he walks away, right? So at that moment, he changes the course of his plot. He changes the course of his journey. And it's very interesting as we all look at our various lives, because so often we're afraid to embrace that call to adventure. And even if we have a mentor, somebody who pushes us, it's still difficult to step into that. So throughout our lives, we build allies, we build enemies, and we go through a series of tests. There's a moment when we embrace that call a little bit, right? When we go out on an adventure seeking that purpose. And that's when we cross very often from the ordinary world to the extraordinary world. So like with Odysseus, right? He left his home and he went on his journey. And then he encountered a series of tests, throughout his journey. And that's how we are. We go through that journey. And there's a lot of different steps in between, but we meet archetypes. And those archetypes are those people in our lives who either reflect the traits that we need to amplify or minimize in ourselves. And they also, help us to learn lessons throughout. So the archetypes are the mentor, right? Typically in film played by an older person, who has wisdom and life experience and can tell us how it is, the grandmother or the grandfather, the emperor, the teacher, the crone, all of those people. For me, I would say Dennis Brutus. He was elderly when I first met him. Maya Angelou, those kinds of people are mentors in my own life. Then as we go through, we meet other people, allies and enemies, who kind of fall as helpers or hinderers to our journey. And then we meet the shapeshifter and the trickster and ultimately the shadow and the higher self. Those are kind of the archetypes that Jung talks about. The higher self is who we should have connected to in the first place, what I call how, right? Higher access to learning. That's who we should connect to in the first place. It's who we should listen to. But we don't often know how to get there because we're too human, we're too flawed. And so that's what we aspire to, is that higher self. But often we find ourselves, in cahoots with the shadow, right? The darkness of ourselves, or we are overcome or overshadowed, literally, by someone who is a darkness in our lives. The shapeshifter is an interesting archetype because the shapeshifter is often who women, when they meet the shapeshifter or they mistake the shapeshifter for their mentor, then they become the shapeshifter. Women are very good at shapeshifting, and very often in the story, a shapeshifter is a woman. It's somebody who can morph between the worlds and the darkness and the light. So like in Gladiator, it's Lucilla, who is Maximus's love interest, but she's also Commodus's sister, right? Commodus, the bad guy's sister. And so she's a survivor. She knows how to enable, right? She's an enabler. She knows how to enable and caretake her brother. And she loves and also tries to work with Maximus. So she shifts between those worlds. And women very often are trying to fit into the role that society has given them. And so they morph, between those worlds. And so a lot of the women that I've worked with in this workshop that I do, and in, the book that I've written and am currently revising, the women think that being a shapeshifter is being the hero. And so they don't make themselves a hero of the story because they have stepped into or been mentored by a shapeshifter. And the shapeshifter can never reach that final elixir, that final road home, because they can't fully step into who they are. They can't seize the sword and embrace who they are. But if they become the hero's journey is to meet and learn from the shapeshifter. And sometimes the shapeshifter will become their ally. Sometimes they'll become their enemy, right? Medusa's an enemy. Lucilla in Gladiator is an ally. but then they move through. Often in the journey too, the weight becomes so heavy, the test becomes so heavy that they meet a trickster, right? Somebody who makes them laugh, who makes them see the irony and the silliness of all of the angst that they have caused themselves or that they are placed in. So that's another archetype that we meet along the way. And I think some people fall into thinking that the trickster, is the way to become the hero. What's really, really interesting about the archetypes as you study them is that each one of them is something that we can learn from and we can embrace the good qualities of. But if we fall into becoming that archetype, then we never truly become the hero. And the hero's job, is to get through that journey and ultimately to take the road home to find the holy grail, the elixir, the treasure at the end of that journey, right? And they can only do that if they learn and if they step through this journey. So trying to shorten this so you guys get all the concepts super quick, but essentially the hero comes to a point, they come to a trial that is so intense that it really challenges them. And all of us, especially Milan, I think has the best articulation of this, and so I'll toss to him in a moment. But once you have that trial, that dramatic moment at which you have to choose between the darkness and the light, you go into that cave. I mean, even Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane, right? He goes into and says, "Take this from me. I can't do it." He goes in and he reflects and he meditates and he thinks about that. And it's called the cave because it's based on Plato's allegory of the cave. But it's when we step into the darkness, and everybody in the allegory of the cave, I don't necessarily articulate it very well, but in the allegory of the cave, you're sitting and you're watching people watch shadows on the walls with a light behind them, and they're watching the shadows on the wall, thinking that that's reality. You sit in the cave with them. And then once you come to that point of self-discovery, you step out and you become enlightened. You realize that there's a sunshine outside of the cave, that shadow dance that people are watching and calling reality is not reality. You become enlightened, there's a reality outside of the cave. The trick is stepping back into that cave and deciding whether you're going to go along with the shadow play and the story that everybody's telling themselves, or whether you're going to step out into the light and embrace your journey and take that sword out of the stone and go and do your mission in life. And so for me, that's a critical moment. And I think so many of us get stuck in that cave. We're so afraid to step out on our own, and do what we know we're capable of doing, step into the sunshine, step into the light and move forward, because it's scary, because at that point, the hero is very alone, right? The hero in the hero's journey has to take the rest of the journey by themselves. And ultimately they'll find more allies along the way, but they have to commit to be ready to do it on their own. And I think that's something, that we often have struggled with in our own lives. So a lot of people get stuck at the cave, at the inner cave. But if they get beyond that, then they go and they have more tests, more obstacles, because things are never smooth. And then they seize the sword in the journey. And that's that moment, I call it the Excalibur moment, where you pull the sword out, and you throw it into the air, and you go on your mission, damn the world, I don't care if I live, I'm going to fulfill my mission. But it's an interesting moment, because it's that moment at which you do embrace your journey, your power, your purpose, and you truly don't care. I mean, you care, but you don't have fear anymore. That when you step out into the light and when you start wielding that sword, that you could get hurt or you could die, because you don't really have that sense of fear. You have that sense of overwhelming purpose and peace and understanding to know that you're capable, of fulfilling that mission. In the traditional hero's journey, that doesn't end there, because like Mariposa has talked about a lot of times, the law of opposites comes into play. And the second that you embrace your journey, you're going to have people who stand up against you. You're going to have obstacles that present themselves just to kind of test and see if you're serious. Are you serious? Are you really going to do this? Is that publisher really going to pick up your book, Terry? How many do you have to go through? And so you think about that, and then you move forward. And that's really, then you have that final test where you win the battle, but then what? So this would be possibly for you. Okay, finally you get your book published. Now what? Right? And that
publish
now
more.
what moment, yeah, that's it. And that's the now what moment is really, really important, because often in the hero's journey, he wins the big battle. And in traditional narrative and traditional myth, he dies, right? And Mariposa talks about the idea that, you have to die to recognize your full self. You have to let the old self die to
Right.
become the new self. And the final journey of the hero's journey is that road back to the ordinary world, back to the inner child, back to the world that you left, and reconciling with that and finding the treasure. And truly, it's finding, for us, in the way that we interpret it, it's that road back to self and to the I am and to the God within us, to the inner child, where we have done everything we need to do in the world, and now we embrace and love that inner child and find the
Right.
treasure within. And I think that's really the moment, of finding that treasure within. So that's kind of the hero's journey in a great overview. I have far more detail than that. And for those of you watching on Facebook, if you're interested in learning more about the hero's journey, or in walking through how the hero's journey can be, how you can pace where you are in your hero's journey, on Gumroad, which Ryan can put the link in, there's a journal that I've put together that helps you walk through, like, think about every one of the archetypes that you've met. What happened to you when you were a child? As an adult, what were the tests that you faced? What are the tests that you are currently facing? Have you embraced your purpose? And if not, what do you need to do that? For me, when I wrote this book, it was really about Act 3, that I feel like I'd made it successfully through Act 1 and Act 2, right? I'd gone through the crossing of the threshold and all the big tests and the cave, but I was afraid to embrace that sword and truly experience that third act, of my life, and fully realize who I was. So if you're interested in that, that's in our resources. You can get that at Gumroad, which Ryan can give us that later. But I'm going to toss to Milan, because I think Milan has a really wonderful way of walking through, some of these literal steps in the hero's journey. And I also find it fascinating that when we all came together, Mariposa, Milan, and I were all writing about and teaching some version of this hero's journey and embracing the hero within. For me, it's about finding your voice and embracing your inner child. For Milan and Mariposa, it just takes a very slight variation on that. So Milan.
Awesome, Jenna. I love you going through those stories, and it's like you said, it is a universal story that we're all realizing. We're all self-realizing. And yeah, those obstacles don't stop just because you made a decision of like, yes, I am going to go for it. It's like, all right, fine. Now you got to get into another fight. And now it's 5-on-1 or something. But yeah, the great thing of it is, I recognize that for a long time in my own life, I was the shapeshifter, just morphing into what worked at the time, what worked in that environment, what worked in that group. And yeah, I was never fully realized. I would, some potential would open up, some potential would open up here or there, but it was really just the idea, living out the ideas of other people. But it wasn't until that really pinnacle moment of, okay, now, life is crashing down. Here's the really hard thing. Now what? And, that now what really opened me up to the answers that were always there that I was just denying, because I was like, nope, this doesn't fit with this environment. So I'm just going to not do that. But when it did, when I started to just embrace that, and it really just started to open up, it didn't make things any easier. But I did feel better about them. And I recognized that I could lead my own story. I wasn't quite leading my own story yet, but I could lead my own story. But as I was doing that, yeah, I was really aware of like who and what was around me and what they were contributing or taking and all of that. But it was really, once I really took the sword for myself, it was taking what I've given to myself along the way and making that public, and trusting that that was good enough and that was powerful enough to make the difference that I sought to make. And tying that to my elementary days of hearing a quote by someone hundreds of years in the past and thinking, oh, it'd be so awesome to have words that would impact other people in such a way that it would be thought about decades and centuries later, that it would still be that impactful. And seeing that as like my guiding light of like, that's the thing. My words are the thing. And then moving throughout, the places, but always maintaining that hero status is something that is constantly on my mind, and it's constantly asking myself, who am I showing up as? But having that clear vision makes it so much easier.
I've been really quiet.
Yeah.
I love what you said, Milan. It's great. It's beautiful. Jenna, I have been like, for the pieces to get together so that you can just like have your moment. I was over here like, dang. I wish I could. You know what I really wish? I'm gonna learn from you. It's a wish that's gonna come true because I demand it. I say it so, Terry. I'm gonna learn to articulate the way everybody on my team does, right? Because we're increasing the hero in each other. I'm so
Right.
fascinated, like when I hear
Yeah.
you guys speak, that Terry, I just want you to feel what I'm feeling and to be able to have poured into your cup everything that we actually pour into each other's, right?
Mhm.
Right.
I messaged Milan, speaking of hero's journey, and did you see the messages, Milan, at all?
No, I heard my phone go wah wah wah.
Okay, so I was doing that, and I know you didn't look because I was looking for your reaction. But in the hero's journey, it takes a hero to know a hero.
Correct.
You get that, Terry? Tell us why you get that. Tell us why you sounded off, please.
Because I think we see part of ourselves in that other person or that other thing. And it's that person that we see as a hero has reached a goal or reached a plateau that we're reaching for, or we're on that plateau, but they have found the answer to reach another plateau. So if we follow our own desires based on the knowledge that we get from them, then we're able to continue forward. And that's just it, receiving that knowledge. I think one of the things when Jenna was talking about being in the cave, I think in my own life, I've had those moments of just being in the cave, because there were those moments where it was like, who am I?
Mhm.
Who am I? What were my desires early on? And like Jenna said, she wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a nurse, but I didn't really want let me see. I can't really think of the word for it. I didn't want all that went into that. I wanted the nurturing part. I wanted the helping part, but I knew that I would have a difficult time in releasing the pain part because I would take it on. I wouldn't just be able to go in and do a job and then go home and not be able to separate myself from that. And that's why I went into teaching, because even though it was just like either in a classroom or part of the time during the day, that continued on after the fact, especially in the line of teaching that I am now privately, because at a center or at a school, you can only do so much, and this was before the world went totally crazy when you couldn't hug and embrace your kids. I was always allowed to do that in the centers where I worked. But now in this area that I'm in now, I have fully come out of the cave as myself. I am able to love, I'm able to nurture, I'm able to give, I'm able to receive. And I receive so much more now that I am open to that light that Jenna mentioned. And I think, that's why I can spot other heroes.
Got it. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
see-
I think. Oh, go ahead, Monty.
I just see messages from Mariposa responding. She's having technical difficulties. So she says, I've always been a teacher one way or another.
Yeah.
A Sunday school
Right.
teacher. I love kids. So I just wanted to make sure that we were including her.
Mhm.
I love what you said. If I just may
Yeah.
continue your, so you just basically said to thine own self be true, right? You said, I'm not gonna put myself over here because this is not being true to me. I don't do this part. This isn't serving me or the people that you want to nurture and help, right, in your journey. I love that you were aware of that. I wanted to say that most of us, we suppress that. We turn the other cheek and we suppress the hero by saying, okay, I can go ahead and handle this because all the rest of it fits.
Mhm.
Make sense? But that idea that you had that it didn't fit for you and you could stick to that. Again, there are a lot of people who hinder themselves and cause themselves to be an employee for the rest of their lives because of that very moment when they could have said, you know, this does not suit me. This is not something I'm going to be able to do and continue to grow. And is it, am I clear? Because I
Yeah,
will.
I think also, Monty, it has to do with being, you know, true to who you are, but being your true self, because everyone expresses things in different ways. So like when I teach this, we talk about Gladiator, right? All of us have seen that movie. I think if not, we get the basic storyline because it's such a straightforward hero's journey. But Maximus is a soldier. It's who he is. And he becomes a leader over time, but he truly has to develop into a leader. So at first he's a soldier. And when Commodus comes to him after he murders his father, right, he extends his hand and he says, embrace me, brother, or the great father is dead. And if Maximus had been smart and he'd been a good politician, he would have embraced him. He would have shook his hand and said, sure. And then he would have figured out how to get him out of office later. But because he's who he is, he says, you know, he throws up his hand and he won't embrace him. And so he, you know, throws down his cards, and Commodus knows that he's now his enemy. And it sets into motion a series of events, right? Maximus's family is killed. It's that whole act one, you know, a soldier who becomes a slave. At that moment, he becomes a slave who becomes a hero. But he has to go through that entire journey. And I think that's something that's really important. You know, I think we are born fully formed. You know, I think we are born like an acorn with the code to becoming an oak inside of us. It's there. It's just how we realize it and how we grow. You know, how is that acorn planted? You know, is it watered? Is it trampled on? Is it snowed on? Whatever. It will ultimately fully realize, you know, if it's allowed to blossom, but it has to go its own path. And I think that's really, really important. And I put in the chat energia. That's a word that Aristotle uses to talk about the moment at which, you know, the plot and the character intersect. It's a moment at which the character makes a decision that sets a series of events into motion, right? So all of us have made those decisions. Milan, you made a decision. You know, you have it's not your fault that you were in the accident, but your decisions up to that point led to that moment, right? And then it became your responsibility after that to realize who you are, to heal, to be whole, to become the hero. And, you know, that crux, that moment of energia, when the plot and the character intersect and a series of events are set into motion that can't be reversed, defines who we become in that adult coming of age, you know, embracing who we are portion of our lives. And I think that's a critical thing to think about, is that, you know, we know who we are when we're born, when we're a child. We you know, we think we know what we want, and then life throws us a bunch of curveballs and we do what we need, right, Terry? We become the shapeshifter, Milan. We do what we need to survive because we've been taught that. And that's the only way that we make it to act 2 and act 3. And so I think there's no judgment in that. And that's an important piece of it, is that we can't judge each other, you know, for how we got to, you know, seizing the sword. And we can't critique, you know, how that journey came about. We just have to understand that that set of circumstances and all of those things that happened to us, all of the things in the plot of our lives that were thrown at us, and how we dealt with those, were that momentum, right? That pushed us forward, that pushed us forward, that pushed us forward. And then where we take responsibility is when that sword is presented to us. Do we pull it from the stone, or do we throw our hands up and walk away?
Right.
And each one of us has chosen in some capacity to pull that sword from the stone.
And that's where I think for me, you guys played, you guys were my sword. You know, I had a choice back in August to say, yeah, I'm going to watch this. Let's see what Milan's been talking about, you know, and then it was like, I was already, I don't think intrigued is the right word, but I was already emotionally and mentally involved. So I wanted to go a step further. And I think for me, the pulling the stone out was to say yes, to join, to be a part of it, to accept the subscription. Because, you know, I've learned so much and I've continued further on my path with the help of each of you, be it a thought or something that you've said or something that you've done, or, you know, it's caused the taser moments, but those are taser moments of growth, you know, and you know, like Mariposa said, it's what I have to accept for myself, not for others, but for myself, and to continue on that path.
Yeah,
To be
and a lot of times,
to be my own hero.
yeah, you know, we can't judge ourselves or feel bad, right? Because, oh, I should have already been this and done that, da, da, da. We just have to embrace where we're at and know that this is our time. It's now. There's no looking back. There's no feeling bad about, because that's our journey and that's the path we took. Because we are like Jenna said, we are born knowing, we are born perfect. But it's like the acorn, what environment was it planted in? We don't get to choose necessarily. Maybe we do in another life. I don't know, but we came where we came, right? And it's the environment. Maybe there wasn't the right soil or the right ingredients. I know it wasn't for me. So I had to figure it out on my own. And the most interesting part about what Jenna said is that we have to do it alone.
Right. And that's one of the things we said last week when we were talking about who we allow access to ourselves. A lot of times during these journeys, we do have to walk alone. And then like Monty said, that's where we see our like-minded people that we come in contact with. And then, you know, we can continue the journey with them for a while, but then maybe at one point we may have to walk alone again for the next part of our journey, but we carry with us those decisions and those lessons learned from those that we walked with before, as well as those that we're walking with now.
Yeah, I mean, we do have guides and mentors and people to show us the way, but ultimately we walk the path alone.
Right.
Because
the work has to be done individually.
Individually.
Yeah, Ryan literally walked that path alone when the people that he set out with and said, oh yeah, let's do this thing. And, you know, he was telling us, well, they all backed out. And he's like, well, I'm still going. I'm just gonna go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all I can think about this topic, on how it was just like perfectly correlated, quite literally, to my experience. It's almost like for me, I was imagining, you know, the shadows in the cave is just like being stuck in the day to day, you know, just being numb, like we've said, you know, just being present and not really anything going on. And then it wasn't until I was able to step out of the cave, grab the sword, and figure out a path for myself. And I don't know, it was quite literally, and it's pretty crazy just because I feel like I can correlate all the characters to that experience as well.
The grabbing of the
it's just a great topic for everybody.
Yeah, it's a great metaphor, because I don't think it's just the one sword that we grab. I think it's continual. We find them in every aspect of our lives, you know, and be it, you know, a sword of stability, a sword of erasing fear, a sword of, you know, walking alone or taking something on, or a sword of listening to, you know, family, friends, loved ones saying, you know, no, you really shouldn't do that. I don't think you should do that. That's not a good idea. You're taking on more than you can handle. You know, if I listened to that, good golly, Miss Molly, I would be nowhere close to where I am right now. And I used to think a lot of it, and I still do, a lot of it is, I think, faith in myself and faith in God and to the path that He's already chosen for me, but it's just my choice as to whether or not, Monty just waved, as to whether or not I'm going to follow that, you know. And I think stepping outside that cave and looking into that light, you know, the metaphor came to me is like when you go to a movie theater. You watch the movie, you're in the dark, you walk outside and it's like, well, we have a choice in life. Do we keep walking into that light or do we go back into the security of the darkness of the cave? And no, we
Yeah.
don't. Keep walking.
That's what I
And
was
it's
just thinking.
interesting that
like,
you use movies too, because it's someone else's story. You know, are we going to live someone else's story and watch someone else's life story unfold, or are we going to embrace our own?
Right.
Sorry, right? Go.
Okay, I was just thinking how, like once you grab that sword and start your journey, there's going to be more swords along the way. But even more important than that, I feel like we might just be going like cave to cave, just like once you accomplish the one thing that you're going for, most people, may fall back and get comfortable again. So it's like you're going from,
Right.
you get the sword and you take lead of your life, but then you make it to that next cave. Now you got like 10 swords, I guess, because you overcame a lot of obstacles. But you get to that next cave, and then it's just, yeah, that scene two, take one. Starting over with the next part of your life. So I feel
And
like
I
it's just a
think
never-ending journey.
the more swords, when you said we're just spilling coffee, we just have a lot of swords. I think it's not that we're carrying individual swords. I think as we gather them, they morph, they meld. They're creating, our hero's shield, our hero's cape, our hero's banner, our hero's sign of, you really don't want to mess with me, I'm packing a sword.
Yeah, I like that. Better analogy.
Yeah, and two, yes, you may start over a handful of times or make a big pivot with a career choice or a marriage choice or a moving to another country choice. And it's the great thing is like the
Or
starting
all of the
over.
above.
Yeah, or all of the above, like Mariposa. It's like I'm just gonna have a whole new life. But like what you're doing it from a place of more strength and more ability and more confidence and more choice and more options and more awareness than ever, because you decided to go through those things. Like you're deciding over and over. And yeah, every so often it feels lonely and it is isolating, but you're doing it from such a more powerful place. Like you're not starting from square one, you're starting from, square 17. And it's like, all right, well, I may not be all the way yet, and I'm not all the way done, but I'm doing it from a lot more powerful place. You're doing it with a lot more knowledge. You're doing it with a bigger network. You're doing it with more confidence, and you're doing it with a lot more resources. And then it's
Right.
like it seems it's easier in that way because you understand and end up trusting yourself. And that's one of the big things that I got from my hero's journey is that self-trust, knowing that I can get through, not just I can get through these things, but I can thrive. I can be
Yeah.
successful. I can become more valuable. I can reach the goals that I set for myself, not the ones that other people set for me or the expectations that they had, but the ones that I set for myself, and going bigger and bigger. Like when I decided to do my master's degree in my second language, that was a really big obstacle to go towards. And I just essentially was doing it for me and with me. But it asked me also to be better and to be more articulate and to be different than I was. And to really, and the great thing about, to go back to the beginning when Jenna was talking about the griot and the storyteller, it's once I was able to really tell my own story, the more I did, the more powerful the story became. And I noticed that even with my master's degree to help me study, I would just tell the stories to other people as I interpreted them. And then that helped me to understand the motivations of the characters that I was studying, but also understand my own motivations for keep going. And motivation, understanding your own motivations, your own reasons to do things is such a big thing that I've gained, is just to understand my own motivations so that I'm no longer moved per se by my circumstances. I'm moved by my own motivations.
I think it's really, and I think it's really, really interesting, when you think about that idea of self-reliance, and so many people have written about that and so many psychologists have talked about it. I mean, that self-reliance is critical, but I think I've talked about this before, but like Alice in Wonderland, when she's in her journey down the rabbit hole, right, from her ordinary world to her extraordinary world, she is constantly getting small, getting big, getting small, getting big. She can't quite find her true size. And then, she steps into the armor, right, to slay the dragon. If you see the Tim Burton movie, it's actually a really great articulation of that. But she puts on the armor to slay the dragon, embraces the sword. And what's really interesting is the Mad Hatter, who has been with her on this journey, says to her, "Oh, I see you. There you are. You've been there all along," right?
Right.
And she steps out and she slays the dragon and she becomes her true self. And then she can go back home, and she can be strong and she can step back into her own environment. And I think it's, it's just really, it's interesting because we are storytellers as species. It's one of the things that sets us apart. And there are universal images, there are universal symbols, there are universal archetypes. So each one of us should be able to see ourselves in this journey and find where we are on that path, and then use the story, use the template, use the universal symbols and archetypes to help guide us, to help us find that step forward. And, I talk about this a lot, but one of the reasons we're together in this group, Milan talks about the power of 5, that 5 times your strength, 5 times, your, when you start to feel like you're falling down or you're tired, you have, all of us to help pick you up and encourage you to go on that journey. Every hero in every story I've ever read has had a moment, not just in the cave, but, during the battle where they're tired, where they have someone who steps in and defends them or helps them stand up or encourages them along their journey.
Right.
And that's critical too. Ultimately, it's about finding that power within yourself and being self-reliant, but you do need those allies to help you, and you need those enemies to challenge you, and so it's interesting.
I love what you just said about, can you say the thing about you need allies to do what?
To lift you up, to encourage you, to help
Mhm.
you embrace that power
Yeah.
within you and step forward.
Yeah, and open up discussions and cause you to not repress your hero and to cause you to believe in what you think and to
Mhm.
connect you with everyone that they can, right? That's what we're
Right.
here for. We're here to make connections, we're here to network, we're here to increase, we're here to evolve, we're here to create. And so
And you're
um
helping each of you, and not just me, but helping each other, is to see and to learn our own powers and our
Mhm.
own strengths as we become our own heroes. I mean, one of the things that I like hearing Milan and Alicia talk about is, well, why should I pay for it? We were all together this weekend for my grandson's birthday, and we went to a simple place, our arcade place, to play. And I was playing with my grandson, with Milan and Alicia's son, Dominic, on one game, and I said, I'll swipe it. And he goes, well, I want to use our card because we got a free card. And I'm like, why didn't you get a free card? I mean, did I expect anything less of you guys coming in here and having to pay for it? And I said, I kind of thought to myself, yeah, we all need that. We're all going to start getting and receiving free stuff and free gifts. And it snowballed just from that thought. And I didn't say anything to Milan about it then because I was basking in it and I wanted the moment to be on Dylan. But we played one of the virtual reality games. And you swipe your card and you pay a fee. And Michael was standing back and I was sitting back. And the guy looks at Michael and goes, if you want to play with him, go ahead and play with him. I'm not going to charge you. And he puts the other monitor on Michael, and he did the first VR with him. Well, then Dylan wanted to play again, and I went back and I was going to watch him, and he was like, if you want to play, you can go ahead and play. I'm not going to charge you. And I'm thinking, okay. It was just something that we had vaguely thought of why not let it be free. We left there and we went to Starbucks, and I was getting my little thing and I had paid for it, and she didn't realize she was doing it on purpose, but for whatever the reason, she made double the batch. And I was like, if you're going to throw that away, don't throw it away. I'll pay for another cup. She goes, nah, you don't have to pay for another cup. I'll just give you another one free. You can go home and freeze this one. And I'm like, okay. okay. You know, because it's coming in waves and it's coming in all kinds of different ways and whatever. And it just,
Woo!
you know, those little things just blow me away. You know, when Monty and Celine and I were texting back and forth this weekend, and he was talking about setting up the meeting with Judy because Peggy was busy, but I had to keep pinching myself going, is this a real text? Yes, this is really going on.
Yeah, like in 9 minutes. Like in
Yeah,
9 minutes, we're gonna be on the call with her. 9
today.
of them, less than 10. Yeah, in just a few minutes. Check your messages. I've been messaging you, girl.
Okay, well, see, I got, okay, yeah.
Milan, I was wondering why she hadn't went to her.
Yeah. Well, and I just was saying in the chat that we need to celebrate with each other too. So like, you know, we find the power within ourselves and we live our own stories for ourselves. But, you know, we need allies. We need people to celebrate with us. We need people to fight for too, you know, and I think that's important. We're not solitary creatures, you know, we're social beings. And, you know, like that, it's so much fun to celebrate with each other.
I'm trying to breathe. No, I had not looked at those messages. I was with Anderson this morning and oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's, you know, you decided to be on this hero's journey, and like we talked about, you know, you meet people along the way that, you know, push you towards that next version and that help you wield that sword, help you build those muscles to wield that sword. And it's, yeah.
I have this overwhelming urge right now to be Celine Dion or whoever's singing, "You are the wind beneath my wings." Okay,
I don't know what this is about, but
just
it
keep the
feels really
fan, just keep the
crazy.
fan and the
It's
wind
Bette Midler.
going, because right now my page is just going woo, woo, woo.
I'm not dealing with Milan. Milan said
I
it's
have
Bette
not
Midler.
seen that. Otherwise, yes, I would have said something because
Terry's
okay.
sword is not a sword, it's a taser. Her
Yeah,
taser to give joy to everyone.
Yeah,
I mean,
I see you, Mariposa. You're right.
well, we have a meeting with her in 10 minutes, and we will. Oh, wait, what you say? What you say? Because
So
no,
this is what I set out to do, like all the time. So it's cool.
Whew, yep, got nothing.
So I shared my personal link because all of our things with Waymaker have reoccurring appointments, and so I didn't want to just flood Judy with all that. She said that Frank, I believe it's her husband, that's going to join us as well. The reason that I went on ahead and invited everyone on this call is because Mariposa expressed interest, and like I mentioned to Milan, I'm writing a book. I'm sure that we're all potential authors, and so I just thought maybe we just do the call together, an introductory, a discovery, and then maybe.
I'm so glad this came up, so I wouldn't be sitting here like a blubbering idiot and Milan texting me going, "Why aren't you on the call?" Because
So we're not meeting Peggy, we're meeting Peggy's sister, the owner of Hasmark. Peggy is an author, her sister's a publisher, and so it's a win-win-win-win-win. I'm DJ Khaled. I'm sorry.
Have the key.
Say it again,
Like
say it
Fun
again,
Friday.
Terry. You know I'm deaf.
Did you say you're DJ Khaled?
Yes, all I do is win,
Yeah.
darling. Yes, ma'am. Come on,
I'll sing it.
Yeah, that's what I said, and I love it because, you know, this is what it's all about. And when you can help people meet their goals, like if you're me, and like that's been your whole life, you just want to finish, you just want to meet your goal, you just want to finish that goal and find another mountain to climb. I used to choose small staircases because I was afraid of heights. So, you know, I get to it 3 steps up, I go, oh, I'm this stuff. So I love to help people meet their goals, and that's what we're here for as the Waymakers. And you know, it made me really happy and emotionally so, because I like it when other people are happy. I think that we have 5 minutes. I'm gonna mute. Probably get coffee.
I
while you
think
guys
You know, it's
Wrap-
interesting, Monty, you say staircase, because I've met you on top of the mountain.
No,
maybe
you
that's
took
what
me
we
on
should
top of
do
the
is-
mountain, and it wasn't fair. We're gonna have that discussion afterward. Don't want to.
But the view was beautiful, was it not?
She told us we're just going up a little ways. Tommy kept going, and you have y'all seen the what's the Grinch? You
Colorado.
know where the Grinch lives? Way up yonder. Man, they had me up where the clouds was right there by my head. Whew, nerves. I'm gonna mute. I'm gonna go get coffee. Love you all. Please conversate. Please have a talk. And Jenny, you definitely wrap up what you did in Mariposa. Please, please speak if you can. This is why it's important to keep the vision of the hero within ourselves. Tears of joy.
Mhm.
We need to celebrate each other too. Otherwise, who are we heroes for? That's very cute. Very good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's an important point, you know, that all of these stories are, you know, ways to light the path for the rest of us, you know, and that for me is what the hero's journey is. And I think, you know, it has become that for Mariposa and Milan. And, you know, with Ryan just did it naturally, literally, right? Taking that path, you know, to find himself along the journey, you know, very physical path, you know, that led him to an emotional and spiritual point. And, you know, as we end this call and you guys begin another, I have to go to another call, but as you begin another, you know, keep in mind, you know, what that call to adventure is, you know, what is your purpose? What is your journey? You know, what is your quest, right? And think about that, you know, what is your quest and what is it that you're trying to accomplish? And one of my favorite books by an author named Bob Litwin talks about, you know, writing your news story for yourself. And it's cute because at the end, he says, I can't end this book because I'm continually writing a new story for myself every day. And the hero's journey, you know, has that beginning and that end, and we have that sense of linear time and our mortality, but we don't have to stop. You know, when we reach one goal, we can build bigger goals. Like Monty says, you can climb higher and higher. You know, you truly can embrace who you are and expand that vision, expand that circle of influence and that joy. You know, I love your sort of, you know, your seizing of the sword being your taser of joy, Terry. I love that. And I think that that's so critical too, that the light is always more powerful than the dark. Hope and love are more powerful than hate and fear, you know, and it's something that I think about even as we go into this week, you know, politically, society, what we're facing and, you know, all the decisions we're making, you know, choose light, choose hope, choose love, because they truly are more powerful than fear and dark. And those stories, you know, that the hero descends into darkness, doesn't have to be that way. You know, you can find the light, you can find your purpose, your truth, your happiness, you know, your tasers of joy. So I think that's probably a good place to end it, Milan.
I was just going to say, one of the things that I realized is that I had been mistaking the darkness for the tomb, and I realized that it was the darkness of the womb. And like I was getting ready to be born again. And it's like, it's over and over. And like every time it gets dark, I'm bringing new insights in there with me. And it's the darkness of the womb. And like I'm being born again and again and again. And it's the other way I've heard it too recently is, you know, when the seed is in the darkness, you think it's just like, oh, I'm just buried and all the dirt is like, ha ha, I got you. I'm stronger than you. But the dirt doesn't realize that it's really soil. And the soil is exactly what the seed needs. It needs the pressure. It needs the darkness. It needs right. It needs the doubt.
Hi
And
guys.
like even as you get stronger, the seed gets stronger and grows up through. Okay, now it has to deal with the sun, and now it has to deal with the rain, and now it has to deal with, you know, the elements. However, like it decided in the darkness who it was and who it would be.
And it also decided that those things that were presenting itself as its enemy were also its tools. And it used each of those to get stronger.
Yeah,
That's why it's
trouble
important
becomes
to embrace
transportation.
I'm gonna leave this meeting. I'm gonna leave this one and start the other one. So you guys, please do follow.
Yeah, we're about to. When
Did
you
you send
end
it-
it, it's gonna end the recording. So
In Facebook.
Okay.
This is when I get to say my famous thing. Waymakers out.
Ow!
adios. See you on the next call. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Enjoy the
Jenna.
journey.
Have a great day.
Oh, I forgot I'm the host.
Yes, you are. Say bye-bye.
And then there were two. Bye bye. Waymakers out.